For the last Sunday in May, you've found the Georgia gang. Topping our agenda this morning, Hillary Clinton comes to Atlanta, but she doesn't actually get down with the people. The feds approve a major improvement on I-285 and Georgia 400, and the courts rule against President Obama on immigration. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you could be with us on this Sunday in May. Megan Hansen here tonight, this afternoon for Phil Kent, sitting in. Glad you could be here, Megan.
Thank you.
And we're going to begin, I'm going to be honest, we're going to begin with presidential politics because there was not a lot of news this week in the great state of Georgia. I mean, it just wasn't there. And but there were presidential candidates aplenty in town. Yep. And we'll begin with Hillary Clinton, who continues this hiding away kind of a campaign. I'm put off by it. It's time for her to mix it up a little bit. She came to Atlanta, Jeff. She raised a bunch of dough at a big gathering in Buckhead. But she didn't meet with the people. She didn't meet with the press. At least in South Carolina, she made some public remarks.
Yes, she did in South Carolina, but I think that she came here specifically for that fundraiser. As candidates, of course, are, they're crisscrossing the country doing exactly that. But obviously, in these states where we got some early primaries, we're going to have one, I believe, in March. And so she was here to meet and mingle with her biggest supporters and some of her affluent supporters, and did so successfully.
Well, but Alexis, doesn't it bother you she doesn't do any public events? She very rarely does.
I think it's a very smart strategy. She doesn't have any real opposition, as the GOP primary is shaping up to be about, 18 or 20 candidates. So they're all trying to get as much exposure as they can. But she's very smartly keeping her powder dry.
You're right, Alexa. She is smart because she has so many questions to answer regarding the multiple controversial issues that are facing her, including the Clinton Foundation donations and Benghazi, just to name a few. She can't do a press
release. She's answered 5 questions.
I think Alexis is right to the extent that...
Megan, you're right. She's answered 5 questions in 6 weeks.
She hasn't had a non-staged press release in months, if not years.
She doesn't have a primary opponent. There's plenty of time for her to address and answer those questions.
Well, you can't discount Bernie Sanders.
Well, I don't think that for most mainstream Democrats that's a credible threat.
Look, just because you don't
to her winning the nomination.
Just because you don't have an opponent doesn't mean you don't have to answer questions that the public has.
Well,
I agree with that, but I think that all of those questions are going to be answered.
And plus the questions that you mentioned have already been answered 500 million times. So I think she's just doing smart. She's biding her time until she gets an opponent that needs to be...
It's a good political strategy.
Wait a minute now.
It's an easy political strategy.
Questions, Alexis, about, for example, these latest revelations about foreign governments giving to the foundation and her selling arms to those same foreign governments while she was Secretary of State. She hadn't answered that.
And the donations from Qatar to the Clinton Foundation, and then the subsequent, while we in the United States was trying to compete for the World Cup in 2018 at the same exact time, and then Qatar won. I mean, they haven't answered questions about that.
The questions about Qatar are being asked and sought by the U.S. Attorney General with the indictments of
not
those
with regard to their money to the Clinton Foundation.
By the way, Alexis, you've got to love Bernie Sanders.
I love Bernie Sanders.
He's your socialist guy.
He is my socialist democratic guy, and I love Bernie Sanders, and I'm looking forward to him raising issues that need to be raised.
So you're going to vote for Bernie Sanders?
I didn't say that. No, we have to be strategic about our voting as well.
All right, now this... We can't ignore the Republicans because they've been very visible, very open, answering questions.
They have to. There's 100 of them.
Exactly.
19 and counting.
I think as of Friday morning there were 10. I'm not sure about that.
Well, all of them have not announced officially yet. They're still going about raising money, which they can do pretty easily before they announce.
But this week we had John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, here, a particular favorite of mine because he balanced the budget as House Budget Chairman back in the 90s when Newt Gingrich was Speaker. And Kasich has done a great job as governor in Wisconsin, except for a little problem with Medicaid that I object to. But Kasich was here, and the press who covered him thought that he was kind of a truth teller, that he was fairly blunt, that he was unvarnished, and he answered tough questions from activist Republicans.
He did,
Unscripted.
and it was so refreshing. I mean, here's a guy who says, "I'm trying to redefine conservatism in America," and if he's successful at that, hats off to him. You know, the remarkable job that he did expanding Medicaid in Ohio under a Republican governorship, I thought was just terrific and an example for Georgia and the rest of the nation. On social issues, he's been very blunt, while others are out there, you know, just playing to the crowd. You know, he's being really honest, and so he reminds me, and Galloway referred to this, but he reminds me of Jack Kemp in a lot of ways.
Well, I think that's a guy that influenced him heavily, by the way.
Right.
You know, we've had at the Republican convention, we had Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz,
Chris Christie.
who else?
I think Chris Christie was there.
Chris Christie was there. That's right. Scott Walker is coming, the governor of Wisconsin. So Georgia's not getting overlooked this cycle. These candidates are Republican side are here, and they're mixing and mingling.
Well, they're going everywhere.
But I think, Jeff, to your point, you're right. There are just so many that I really wonder how, Megan, how anybody's going to break through. We already know that in August the first debate happens. Fox has decided to limit the number of participants based on their polling numbers. The polling numbers I see, they're all about the same.
Right.
So there are
They have five of them at
there are
10%,
five
right?
that are tied right now at 10% apiece. So
I don't see how they break through.
And what is the New York governor, George Pataki?
Pataki, yeah.
just
Pataki got
announced this
in, that's
week.
right.
And
I don't see
why?
him carrying very much.
No, you know, he's
Southern
yesterday's
support.
news.
Yeah.
And then your recommendation last week that we invoke affirmative action for these guys so that they can all get an opportunity to be heard. I thought that was pretty progressive, right?
That's right.
Maybe you're redefining conservatism right along with John Casey.
Now, the other thing for hardcore political, for the real hardcore political junkies, it's an interesting thing to see. The famous Iowa caucuses are on the way out, apparently drowned out by the SEC primary right here in the South. The southern states.
Yeah.
Our Secretary of State has done a great job leading the charge with that. I was actually in Alabama last week, and some of the Secretary of State staff over there were praising our Secretary of State, which was good to hear, for his efforts in the SEC
But
primary.
these candidates are going to be here rather than go pay their dues at the Iowa caucus.
Right.
And I've always thought that was kind of, that almost felt like vote buying the way they do it in Iowa.
Well, it's just a different way. I mean, you meet with different groups, and as opposed to the general population having a vote. So it is very different, but it's tradition.
And they were spending tons of money to ship people in to Iowa to go vote, and I always thought that was a little,
Well, that's what I mean.
yeah, not very Republican of us.
Not very
like vote buying.
democratic.
It's always felt like vote buying.
Right.
It felt like big city machine kind of politics.
Kind of loading the deck there a little bit.
Yeah.
So I would say, as we end this segment, I've never been more confused on the Republican side of the ballot than I am this time, because there is no clear frontrunner, and I don't see who breaks through. Rick Santorum declared this week.
That's right.
Is he yesterday's news? George Pataki,
Right.
yesterday's news, three-term governor of New York. I don't know what they all hope to gain from this.
I heard a good analogy about where it's kind of like going to Walmart. You have so many options on a product that it's like, well, you know, which one do I like the best?
Well, I also I heard that Jon Stewart said he might not retire because it's going to be too much fun covering the GOP.
All right, we got to get out. Governor Deal goes to Hollywood. Yeah, we'll tell you about that in just a minute.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
And we are back, and we often say on this broadcast that the governor makes the news in this state, always does. And one of the reasons this week has been quiet is Governor Deal wasn't here. He was in Hollywood.
Making news,
I think
though,
that's
nonetheless.
altogether good news that he was out there. And it still kind of shocks me that we are approaching Hollywood-like status and having more films and television programs made here than Hollywood. That's strange.
True. Yeah.
It's a great thing. All right, now let's. So that having been said about the governor, let's switch to the local scene. Jeff, Burl Ellis, the retrial begins tomorrow. I guess jury selection begins in the DeKalb Superior Court. This one kind of snuck up on us. You'll recall that Burl Ellis had a mistrial the first time around. He's accused of shaking down campaign contributions. not of taking any public money, nothing like that.
Right.
No personal gain.
And but there's a side angle to this with that trial beginning, and that's the man who was initially involved with Burl Ellis, Kevin Ross, was never indicted.
No.
He had a search warrant issued.
Right.
But he was never indicted, and I've wondered about that, and now you've learned that Kevin Ross is filing suit against the whole free world.
Well, he is filing suit against the district attorney, Robert James, an investigator in his office, and apparently 3 private individuals who shared what Kevin says was false information with the district attorney's office. And the district attorney is being sued because he followed up on the basis of what he thinks is just rumor, innuendo, and completely false statements. And so there is that lawsuit that was filed, I believe, on Friday. That says that that they interfered with his business. He also issued a press statement where he said he was sitting at his
But
desk.
he's not accused of anything. Let's be sure of that.
No. He's not accused of anything, and that's why you had the search warrant at his home and at his house, completely unannounced. Didn't know anything about it at all. And
isn't that the point of a search warrant, though?
No.
To surprise them a little bit, so they can't get rid of evidence.
Not in these kinds of instances. A lot of times you get, particularly when you're dealing with lawyers and other prominent people, you get advance notice. You know what's going to happen. There's been some interaction with the district attorney's office. There was none in this case. But yes, he was taken completely by surprise, never indicted. His name was never publicly cleared, and I think that that's why he's taken the action that he's taken.
Well, it's also, goes back to, I think the real problem is the way that the Cobb County government and the CEO office is structured. You've got the CEO, who is an elected person, managing contracts and things that he has to, manage, and the appearance is just...
And you didn't see the legislative delegation make even an attempt to change that structure this past session.
Which was terrible.
It's a joke is what it is. Now, there was a huge story this week that I don't think got the coverage it deserved. The state's highest transportation priority at the moment is the interchange of Georgia 400 and I-285. What is it, 460,000 cars a day go through there? I think that number's correct. And to my absolute amazement, these things used to take forever. The federal government gave the environmental approvals to both projects, which means they can start. And it's $1.2 billion in state money to go to that major interchange, which is really today's 5 points, if you think about it, of the metro area.
Right.
It's there. So that
Happy
happened.
days are here again.
That was one of the projects that was on the T-SPLOST list, and of course that failed.
Right.
And we've seen some others around the metro area that have gotten done in spite of that lost referendum.
Then another kind of transportation news of a sort, the Beltline, Jeff, I know you're much higher on it than I am, but it got a big boost this week with 2 large private contributions, the Jim Kennedy and Cox and the PATH Foundation, and Richard Anderson and his wife. He's the chairman of Delta Airlines, whom I occasionally speak ill of, but they put in millions to extend the Beltline around the west side. Now, Alexis, you probably have a better feel for that than I do.
Well, I think one of the great things about the West Side Trail or the West Side area is this park that is going to emerge that's going to be bigger than Piedmont Park. It was an old rock quarry, and it's just going to be a magnificent addition to the city.
The Beltline is transformative to the city to the extent that it knits together all of these communities and that you can get to them by bicycle or by walking or jogging. So it's not something that's going to happen immediately, but over the next 10, 15, 20 years, millennials, Megan is nodding because millennials are excited about this. It really changes how people get around.
Yes, they really appreciate the green space and what it's adding to Atlanta, and
yeah, and I would recommend people take the tour, the Beltline tour, to see it. I think it's like a 2 or 3 hour bus tour, but it's free and they do it on a regular basis. And I did take that tour, and they took us out to this rock quarry. We had to wait a few minutes because people were standing at the gate where they had it blocked off, and we tried to find out what's going on, and they said this is where they filmed The Walking Dead or something like that. And so they were just trying to see it. So it's quite a tourist attraction.
That tour, yeah.
Now, Cobb County did something this week that I'm not quite sure I understand. They capped what they will spend on the new Brave Stadium at $462 million.
Right.
Why is that a big deal? Does anybody understand that? I don't.
No.
Maybe it's public appearance. There's
Right.
only so much that they're going to spend.
We're only going to
Yeah.
do $500 million.
I guess they're trying to go on record as saying this is all we're going to spend.
That sounds a little dangerous to me, because with construction, things, delays
never
and
know.
things
Well, that
always
was my
happen.
thought. That
but-
was my thought in reading about it. Yeah, it was my thought
Right.
exactly.
I guess
Now,
there's some hero in the background who's going to step up. if something
We've already
comes up.
got some early voting going on. This is very strange, as much as we all like politics. In DeKalb, your district, in fact, early voting began this past week. And there are 10 candidates for Lee May's commission seat.
That's correct.
10. And I saw where they're having like 9 forums.
It's a crowded field. There are a lot of
Sounds like
forums
the
in and
Republican
I know it. I have to break them up into sections.
Yeah.
Right. Do some polling.
That's right. That's right.
Can you call a front runner? I can't.
It's very, very difficult to call a front runner. First of all, you're going to have extremely low voter turnout. I
Right.
mean, it's a special election. It's in the, it's in the vacation season. Kids are out of school, and I just don't think a lot of people are tuned in. Now, we've had a lack of representation there, or underrepresentation there for a couple of years now since Lee May was appointed interim CEO. But I think that for most folks, this is sort of inside baseball. I don't know how many votes ordinarily you expect maybe 10%. At this point, maybe half of that, and that complicates matters even
There's
more.
about 7,000 out
that's
of
true. We've got some
150.
legislative special elections coming up as well,
Yeah.
including in Brookhaven, Megan,
Yeah.
where the mayor, J. Max Davis, will qualify this coming week to run for a state house seat,
Right.
and then Brookhaven's council will have to elect a new mayor. So there'll be all kinds of shuffling going on.
There's also a seat to replace Tyrone Brooks, who stepped
That's
down
right.
from
There's
his
another
position.
special. That's right. I think there are
And up in
4
Forsyth
altogether.
as
Yeah,
well.
Forsyth. That's right. All right. When we come back, the imperial presidency, Barack Obama tries to take over all your water, including that pothole at the end of your driveway. Stay with us.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at myfoxatlanta.com.
The Federal Environmental Agency this week announced new rules governing, I believe they call it Waters of the USA. Is that the name of it? And it seems to me like every Georgia politician has come out against it. Senators Isaacson, Senator Perdue, most of the congressional delegation. And basically, it is a huge regulatory takeover of every puddle, every pond, every stream, every pothole. It's
laugh, but
amazing.
it's
They've
kinda
done
true.
it.
I don't know that all that much of a takeover was necessary. I mean, if you've ever worked with any of these projects, with the Fish and Wildlife Service, for instance, or some of the other regulatory agencies, the Corps of Engineers, they've always had a very strong regulatory role in, in our waters and tributaries.
But this is good. If you listen to our senators, David Perdue and Johnny Isaacson, this could drastically impact every farmer, every
Yes.
rancher.
Yes, because I believe it used to just be the tributaries that flowed into
Yeah.
the
Interstate.
major rivers on the interstate.
Now it's every little stream, every little pond.
Right.
The Obama administration also had a setback in court this past week. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals out of New Orleans ruled against the president on his amnesty plans for illegal aliens. I'm sorry, Phil's not here to celebrate that. But that is a setback, and that's the second one. And so I wonder what's going to happen to that plan. Megan, do you have a feel for if the Fifth Circuit said the lower court was right? I've got to believe that other courts are going to fall in line with that.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. And I know that, like you said, it is the second setback. And so I think that they're just going to try and find a workaround if that's not going to work.
Right, and I also think that they will argue the point to the next level of the court, and then eventually it may get to the Supreme Court. But I think it's well worth the argument. I mean, this is an opportunity to get some relief for people who've been here for decades and their children.
But they came here illegally.
They did, but many of their children were born here, and so this is an
We have to
opportunity
change that
keep
policy,
these
too.
families together.
I also want to talk about more of Obama's policies and how they play out in the real world. We've got some scores from our big cities. Baltimore 26-9, Chicago 43-12. Those are not football scores. Those are killing scores. In Baltimore last weekend, 26 people shot, 9 of them killed. In Chicago, 43 people shot last weekend, 12 of them killed. This is an example of a nation gone haywire, and I would argue that the president's permissive policies and his shackling of our nation's policemen by Eric Holder and the Justice Department has led to this lack of policing in these major cities. And these terrible shooting totals.
Well, you know, we had a murder rate that was considerably higher 20 years ago than we do right now, and so I don't know that that's reflective of the rising
no, that's
crime
true.
rate
It's
or
gone
anything that the
down.
mayor has
I
done,
agree.
or anything that the president has done. I think that it just reflects a violent society and a society where guns are so readily available.
Well, but Megan, I look at it as Eric Holder saying he's gone now, but saying to the police, it was his policies, that saying to the police in cities like Baltimore, especially Cleveland, you cannot continue to police the way you are. You've got to change the way you do business. The disgrace of Ferguson, Missouri.
Absolutely. I think that there's definitely been a restriction on what the police can do and even protecting themselves, such that more people are in danger, and therefore we see a higher,
I think it's
higher
just
murder
the
rate.
opposite. I think that the militarization of the police force over the years has led to increased gangsterism by some parts of the police force.
But I look at Baltimore, Alexis. I live there. I look at Baltimore. I look at those numbers from last weekend, and that says to me that the police are not policing. They're not going into those neighborhoods. They're allowing the bad guys.
Or it says that the police are not being allowed to police, so therefore there's more murders by by
And the police commissioner admits that. He says his officers are confused.
I also think Jeff is absolutely correct. I mean, this is a violent society. We've been killing people, and the Second Amendment rights and everything. I mean, people. This is. What did it say? Violence is American as apple pie.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a call for gun control or anything. I don't know that will necessarily change it. It's just part of our culture.
Not when these guns are illegal.
Right. Right. It's just part of the American culture.
No, I think this is deeper. This is the Obama's administration's undermining of our nation's police.
Well, I
think police will tell us.
Even if it's not undermining, he's not being supportive either.
I think that when we've had far higher crime rates in America, far higher murder rates in America, when Obama was, I don't know, living abroad or a child, that it has absolutely nothing to do with his policies. This reflects who we are as a nation, and we really need to examine ourselves and take a look. And when Obama, I mean, very, very personal speech when the shooting in the Colorado movie theater, and the nation was just in mourning over this horrific event. It could happen to any of us. Any of us could have been sitting in a movie theater when someone opens fire. And I think that it's those, and I think instead of him being responsible, he's led on issues like that and tried to get the nation to at least examine and look at some of the issues that we're facing.
That's a mental health issue. That's not to be confused with the undermining of our big city.
But the other thing too is that the police department the Justice Department definitely found some places, like in Ferguson, where the police force was using the community to pay for city services by arresting people, harassing people, finding them, putting them in jail. And so I think that needs to be addressed, and that's what the President has and the Justice Department has done.
And I think when we're out shooting and killing each other in the street, it's all mental health issues.
We've got to get out. But I tell you, I just look at Baltimore, and I see that the President is reaping what he sowed. When we come back, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Looks like I talked too much. We're going to be a little short of time, but I will begin with you, Alexis.
Okay, thank you. I first want to salute Monisha Mahadavan, a 14-year-old Woodward Academy student from here in Atlanta who made
Dunwoody, to be precise.
There you go. Made the semifinals in the National Spelling Bee. Congratulations to her for that good effort. Also, I want to salute the city of Atlanta. The whole month of May was the Jazz Festival month, and we had music all over town and wonderful weekend, a Memorial Day weekend in Piedmont Park. And then James Sanders passed. He was a local photographer, called himself Jimmy Flicks, and he was a terrific guy. One of the more unique things that he did, he lived downtown and he took a picture every week of the Center for Civil and Human Rights as it was being built and shared that on Facebook with lots of folks, and he took a lot of great pictures around town, so he'll be missed.
All right, Megan.
My winner this week is the Texas House of Representatives who passed campus carry, and also the U.S. Justice Department for going after the FIFA corruption. And my losers are FIFA for their corruption and the Clinton Foundation for taking money from Qatar while the United States was also bidding for the 2018 World Cup.
All right, Jeffrey.
I'm going to say Kevin Ross for the lawsuit that he's filed. I've known Kevin for the better part of 25 years and never known him to do anything untoward. We work together on a lot of projects, and I think that this is a very good public way for him to clear his name, as it should be cleared. The mayor of the city of Atlanta, I think, is a winner for going in there and overseeing that trial of Rick Warren, who is being called a slumlord for owning so many dilapidated properties over English Avenue. And the West Side Trail also is a winning, but let me tell you about West Side. They're all connected. Rick Warren and trying to fix that up and getting the West Side Trail done, it's all part of that Falcons deal.
All right, we're out. I'm out next week. Alexis is out for several weeks. We're going to miss you. And we'll see you next week on the Georgia Gang.
Are you still going to?